Galactic.
Hey, everybody. My voice is starting to sound a little bad, but because I just spent the last 2 hours talking with somebody. Man, I'm such an introvert, and I'll go like an entire week without having an important conversation with somebody, like an intricate conversation with somebody, and then when I could just stay home all week and not talk to anybody, and no big deal. But then once I get out into public and meet people for the first time, I'll just like have this long podcast with a stranger, but there's no recording of it. I mean, I've had probably 3 conversations in 3 weeks with people that could be podcast quality conversations. And I just, I'm not recording them because I don't know these people. And it's just, I just meet them for the first time. And it's just like, boom, 2 hours later, we've had this podcast quality conversation. And yet I don't really pursue friendships. Like, hey, we had a great conversation. It was great knowing you. It was great talking to you for the last 2 hours. And part of that is just because I move around so much and it's just like hard to make close relationships. There's not nearly enough time to do all the things I want to do. I want to podcast. I want to write music. I want to hang out with people. I want to go on a date. It all interferes with each other. And half the time I just end up recovering from a hard week of work on my first day off and just like plump down on the bed or on the couch or whatever. Recently I've been listening to this song, which I've known probably my entire life, but I just started paying attention to one of the lyrics. It's on my Spotify playlist. The one I'm thinking of is called Feel So Good. And I was too lazy to make a new account when I bought my new phone. So it's on the Cleveland podcast. I don't know, what would that be? The playlist, or would that be like the name of the account? So I think you can look it up, the Cleveland podcast, and the name of the playlist is Feel So Good, which is like it's an old song by a guy named Chuck Mignon. Mignoggy? I don't know. It sounds French, and I can never tell if they pronounce their names in the traditional French version or the Americanized version. I used to know a girl whose last name was Gagnet. I'm like, Gagnet? And she's like, no, Gagne. That's not Gagne, that's Gagnet. You ever like look at those hockey guys' names? Gui is Guy. Patrick Roy is Wah. And what is Tkachuk? Old hockey player. Keith Tkachuk is his name. Tkachuk. But anyways, Chuck Mignongi. Wrote this old song with a French horn. It's like, man, why did French horns go out of style? I loved old music where they had like flutes and clarinets, and I don't know, like one of my favorites is Leader of the Band by Dan Fogelberg. The leader of the band is tired and his eyes are growing old. That one. And then like what is that one? A French horn? Wait, I gotta look this up. Okay, it says online, the song Feels So Good by Chuck Mignoni features the following instruments. The flugelhorn. Wow, it wasn't a French horn after all. It's the flugelhorn. Guitar, saxophone, bass, drums, electric piano, trombone, voice. I don't know where the voice is in that song, but backup vocals. I don't know where that is either, because it's mostly an instrumental. But it's like one of the first songs I remember. And so was Leader of the Band. I think it's Leader of the Band that has the French horn solo in it. I mean, how many times do you hear a flute solo in modern music? The last time I heard one was Michael Kiwanuka, Tell Me a Tale. Got an amazing flute solo. And when I first heard that, I thought, oh, who is this? Is this Van Morrison? No, it's like this, I don't know. I guess at this point, it says 2012, but I'm not sure if it's that old or not. Yeah, I think it probably is about that old at this point. Yeah, Michael Kiwanuka, Tell Me a Tale. And then there's like this flute solo throughout it. But you hear that like in Moondance, and it's like, man, not everything needs to be done with a synth. Bring back the flute players, bring back the clarinets, bring back the flugelhorn players. That's what we don't have enough in society of. Flugelhorns. I'm gonna start a movement to bring back the flugelhorn. The muted trumpet, that's a good one. I don't really like the trumpet. I do like the muted trumpet in modern music. I say modern, but I don't know when the last time I heard one was. But anyways, in the song by Jim Croce called Time in a Bottle, one of the lyrics is, but But there never seems to be enough time to do the things you want to do once you find them. And I think of that as I listen to that this week. It's like powerful and relevant lyrics this is to my life. Because when I was a child and I grew up on a farm, I was bored out of my mind all the time. And all I do is sit around and watch television. And I just had all the spare time in the world. And I wish I had some of that back. It just feels like time goes by so fast. The reason that lyric is so powerful to me is because it's just like, when you're young, you don't know what you like. And as you get older and you start to experience more things, like when I was a kid, podcasts didn't even exist, you know? I didn't know I liked to podcast, but it's so time consuming. When I was a kid, I didn't know I loved journaling. I didn't know I loved all the many, many things I love to do. And just they all compete for time. Like, okay, I could either journal today or I could podcast. And it's like they fight for time. But anyways, I went out to the desert thinking about this one subject because I was out in the middle of nowhere and all I had was my smartphone. I didn't have like my laptop. And I was frustrated because I was trying to type something out on Facebook using my smartphone, using the keypad on the smartphone. And it was frustrating me so much. And here's what I ended up writing. I ended up writing it with my smartphone. I think I probably fixed it later the next day or whatever. But it says, have you ever heard somebody say, I had a thought, but then I lost it? Think about how quickly thoughts can arrive and depart from our minds. How many important thoughts that we have are lost forever because they just escape from us before we can do anything with them. I bet it's a lot. When trying to record or share thoughts and ideas, and I probably, I probably think about this a lot because I do podcasting, I do journaling, and I do all that stuff. And so let me go back. When I try to record or share thoughts and ideas, speed can be important. Therefore, I would say that this is the order in which it's easiest to lose your thoughts. And number one is typing on a smartphone. Number two, in my mind, would be when using a keyboard, unless you're like, 80 words per minute typer and you type really, really fast, which is not me. And then third for me would be physically writing with pen and paper. Like if I'm typing on a smartphone, I'm so clunky. Maybe it's because I've seen my niece type on a on a smartphone before and she goes so fast. And she makes fun of me for how slow I go. But for me, smartphone is by far the slowest. So it's smartphone, keyboard, pen and paper. And then I think the fastest, the most efficient would be verbally expressing your thoughts to somebody. Like I've even noticed that I go way faster when I'm talking to another person because it just kind of stimulates conversation. Depends on my mood too. Sometimes I sit down to do a podcast and nothing comes out. And other times I sit down to do a podcast and it's like an hour and a half later. It's like, wow, did I just talk for an hour and a half? Kind of comes back to time in a bottle, Jim Croce. But there never seems to be enough time to do the things you want to do once you find them. Back to my thoughts that I had out in the desert. Now you might be thinking, Caesar, thoughts aren't always worth sharing or even remembering, and yours rarely are. To which I would say, fair point, right? Then it says, I have to imagine that people have important thoughts all the time, but they're just like, now what do I do with that? It often takes a lot of effort and time to turn a good thought into something meaningful. So sometimes it's just easier to forget the idea completely than to be entertained instead. So it's just really easy not to have to even think. And it takes a lot less of our own effort to cling to somebody else's narrative than it does to cultivate our own thoughts. And who even has time for that, right? Because there never seems to be enough time to do the things we want to do once you find them. I mean, how much time have you ever thought about, like, spent recording what you think? I mean, it's kind of a weird thing to do. Like, how many people podcast? If you're not recording your thoughts, you never have to listen to yourself speak. So how do we analyze ourselves without having to hear ourselves speak from basically a third party? And I think another thing is also the anxiety of being judged or even dismissed for our thoughts is probably another reason why it's easier to squash our own ideas rather than to cultivate them. Anyways, I wonder if society's collective use of smartphones over paper, as well as virtual interaction online over actual community interactions, has caused people to dumb down the quality of ideas that they share with one another due to the added time that it takes to express our thoughts before we lose them. So that kind of makes me think, it's like, okay, well, what's the fastest way to record our thoughts? What's the most efficient way to record our thoughts? And I went back to my list. And it's like, wait, I've been journaling for the last 3 years and I have recording devices. It's like, why don't I just, instead of writing for hours at a time, because I've been kind of like, I've been falling behind and it's frustrating. And once I lose the day, I get like 4 days behind. And then I have to go back and try to remember everything that happened for the last 4 days. And it's like, well, I can just do this on my recording device in a fraction of the time. I could just record it to audio rather than journal every day. And I'd be far more likely to go back and listen to the audio later than I would be to read the actual journal. And it's, the longer I've been doing it, the more I think, what's the point? And I think in the initial stages, it did an amazing job of changing my life. But as I go on, it's just like, okay, I journal and I'm like, today I went to work and then I came home and then I ate Del Taco and then I went to sleep. I'm trying to stop doing that. I ate so much Del Taco this year. Oh, that's my alarm telling me I'm out of time, which is fine because I'm trying to do shorter episodes anyway. All right, guys, have a great one. Later. Thanks for listening to the show. The Great Big Intergalactic can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, Apple iTunes, and anywhere else that podcasts can be heard. If social media is your thing, you can follow the program on Facebook or Twitter. If you enjoy the show, upvote, share, like, and subscribe. Whenever and wherever those things can be done. If you'd like to send feedback, the easiest way to do that is to email the show at tgbiuniverse@gmail.com, TGBI as in the Great Big Intergalactic, or you can leave a voicemail at 216-200-7940. Contributions could include written feedback, audio submissions, voicemails, or potentially even live guests. It was great having you today, and see you next time.